Airports are machines of movement. Every day, millions of travelers pass through, dragging their luggage across polished floors, while behind the scenes, another world churns in constant motion. Cargo bays, security corridors, baggage tunnels. These are the arteries that keep the global economy alive. And inside those arteries, temptation whispers, cash shipments, gold bullion, narcotics hidden in pallets. To an outsider, airports look like fortresses. But to the workers inside, who know every blind spot, every routine, and every shift change, airports look more like opportunities. This is where our story begins, with a group of ordinary airport workers who thought they could outsmart the system, grab millions, and vanish. But what they didn't know was that customs officers were watching every move. The backdrop is London Heathrow, one of the busiest airports on Earth. Each year, Heathrow handles 1.7 million metric tons of cargo, from rare antiques and priceless art to sealed cases of foreign currency destined for banks abroad. For a baggage handler making £10 an hour, the sight of sealed cash bags or pallets marked for Middle Eastern banks must have felt like a cruel tease. The money moved right past their fingertips, out of reach, locked in shrink wrap and security tape. But a few workers decided they weren't content to watch anymore. They wanted in. The group was small, a handful of baggage handlers and a security manager who knew the airport like the back of their hands. They had clocked thousands of shifts, moving luggage, hauling boxes, pushing carts down echoing tunnels. They also knew the system's weak spots. Shift overlaps, when security officers changed posts, created small windows where no one was looking. Blind zones in the camera network left parts of the cargo bays unwatched. Customs rotations meant there were predictable lulls in inspections. The workers weren't gangsters or hardened criminals. They were insiders, men who believed their knowledge of the system was enough to beat it. Among the cargo shipments at Heathrow were sealed security bags of currency being transported overseas. One case in particular stood out. Millions of pounds bound for a bank abroad, stacked onto a pallet under guard and shrink-wrapped tight. To customs officers, it was routine. To the workers, it looked like the perfect score. Their plan was simple. They would pull the pallet slightly off course, extract the cash bag under the guise of routine handling, load it onto a service van, and drive it out of the restricted zone. No guns, no alarms, just a quiet disappearance. For weeks, the workers rehearsed the plan. They watched when customs patrols passed by. They timed the security sweeps. They tested how long it took for alarms to trigger. Each shift brought more confidence. Each loophole they spotted felt like confirmation that they could pull it off. And finally, on a late summer evening, they decided to act. The bag was there, sealed, marked, and sitting on the pallet waiting for transfer. The handlers rolled the pallet toward a quieter corner, just as they had planned. One cut through the shrink wrap, another pulled out the bag, and within minutes, it was hidden in the back of a van under a tarp. Hearts pounding, they drove toward the staff exit. They believed they had done it. They were no longer baggage handlers scraping wages. They were thieves who had just walked away with millions. But the dream lasted only minutes. What the workers didn't know was that customs had been watching for weeks. Suspicious behavior had tipped them off. Handlers lingering near restricted pallets, vans idling too long near cargo bays, men taking extra breaks near high-value shipments. So when the van rolled toward the gate, customs officers were already in position. The trap closed fast. Sirens blared. Vehicles boxed the van in. Armed officers surrounded it, shouting for the men to step out. Inside, the handlers froze. Their entire scheme had collapsed in an instant. When customs officers opened the van and unsealed the bag, the truth came out. The millions they thought they had stolen? It wasn't spendable cash. It was marked currency, logged, serialized, and trackable. Even if they had made it past the gates, the notes were worthless. Their perfect heist had been doomed from the start. To the handlers, this was never about violence. They saw themselves as clever underdogs, exploiting a broken system. In their minds, they were men taking what they believed they were owed after years of grinding labor, while millions floated above their heads. But to customs, they weren't heroes. They were betrayers. Insiders abusing their positions in one of the most sensitive facilities in the country. Their actions didn't just threaten money. They threatened trust in the entire airport system. The handlers thought they were writing themselves into the history books of great heists. Customs saw them as criminals headed for prison. The arrests made headlines across Britain. Airport workers caught in multi-million-pound heist attempt splashed across tabloids. In court, prosecutors painted the handlers as greedy opportunists who endangered national security. The defense countered with stories of long hours, low pay, and men who simply snapped under pressure. But the evidence was overwhelming. Surveillance footage, seized currency, recorded movements. The verdict: guilty on charges of conspiracy to steal and breach of trust. The sentences were harsh, between 6 and 10 years in prison for the key players. Their families watched as dreams of easy riches turned into cold years behind bars. Heathrow immediately overhauled its procedures. Security cameras were expanded. Customs patrols doubled. Baggage handlers were rotated to prevent any one crew from gaining too much familiarity with sensitive cargo. The message was clear: airports were fortresses again. But the story lingered in the public imagination. People couldn't resist the idea of ordinary workers coming so close to stealing millions, only to lose it all because customs had been one step ahead. The heist attempt never reached the glory of the Lufthansa robbery of 1978, or the Dunbar armored heist of 1997. There were no folk heroes, no legends whispered in criminal circles. Instead, the baggage crew became a cautionary tale. They weren't masterminds, they weren't visionaries. They were insiders who mistook access for opportunity and paid the price. Their story sits at the intersection of greed and desperation, where ordinary men gamble their lives against systems too powerful to outwit. In the end, the story of the airport workers who thought they stole millions is less about the money and more about the myth of the perfect crime. They believed insider knowledge made them untouchable. They believed the system's cracks were wide enough to slip through, but customs proved otherwise. In the shadowed corridors of Heathrow, the men learned the hard truth: the airport always wins.